Good morning, Honourable Minister Prakash, CMA President Singh, Vice President Basu, CMA Dalwadi, the Chair of the Technical Committee 2020 of the Global Summit, and CMA Sharma, the Chairman of the Organizing Committee, CMA Mishra, CMA Saraf, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As Deputy President of the International Federation of Accountants, I'm proud that on behalf of IFAC and its members, I can represent your work in a global context. The ICAI is one of IFAC's founding members, joined when IFAC was formed. IFAC today has about 170 members from over 130 countries. And through our members, we support over 3 million professional accountants in the world, which is a force for good in the global economy. ICAI is a very distinguished member of IFAC, and for over 75 years, you have served and supported India's remarkable economic development. I would also like to recognize the many distinguished speakers on this program. It is a true honor for IFAC to be a participant at this prestigious event, and it is a real pleasure to be here today with you. The vibrancy of India and your contribution to our profession makes this country the perfect host for the World Congress of Accountants in 2022 in Mumbai. We are all greatly looking forward to what will no doubt be an inspirational global event. Throughout my remarks, my message will be quite simple. Professional accountants are necessary to drive economic growth and in support of the public interest. I will reflect on the profession's role in economic growth by considering perhaps the most important trends facing businesses around the world. Particularly today, one of the things that is most urgent, which is the challenge of the climate emergency. I will turn to how we as a profession can contribute to economic growth. India's 5 trillion GDP target calls on professional accountants to lead and add value to the economy. And I will focus on several aspects of the profession's contribution to sustainable economic growth, including sustainable development growth, good corporate governance, effective measures against fraud and corruption, commitment to ethics, and strong public sector accounting practices, and last but certainly not least, in trust. The impacts of technology on business and on governments and society generally are disruptive, rapid, and profound. IFAC's Technology Advisory Group studies which technology trends are likely to impact the economy and our profession. We focused on 4 key developments referred to as ABCD: artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity, and data. AI and blockchain are already here. But for most businesses, access to sophisticated AI and blockchain systems are some years off. Cybersecurity and data offer promising areas for professional accountants to add value in the economy. Professional accountants are particularly important in assessing risk management processes and ensuring adequate recovery planning from cyber threats, measuring risks and return on investment based on potential breaches and data theft, and finding ways to mitigate risks with controls around data and policies for breaches. As for data, accountants are well versed in core financial and management reporting principles of relevance, reliability, completeness, and accuracy in order to support business decisions. With a strong foundation in principles of what contributes to value, accountants can lead the way to ensure data is subjected to a strong governance framework. And I will add an E to ABCD, which is for ethics. Our profession has a critical role to play to ensure that all new tools, processes, and technologies that organizations adopt and use are employed ethically. IFAC sees 7 emerging roles for professional accountants. First, the co-pilot. We lead strategically, facilitate change, and influence people and decisions. The navigator. We steer an organization towards value creation and sustained profitability by providing actionable insights. As brand protectors, we manage the organization and its reputation through stewardship of tangible and intangible assets and financial and non-financial performance. As storytellers, we enlighten all stakeholders across the organization and outside the organization on its narrative, how it creates value over time, and the opportunities and challenges it faces. As digital and technology enablers, we drive business to use data and make decisions in order to grow. As process and control experts, we drive efficient and effective end-to-end processes and workflows across the organization. And finally, the trusted professional. We challenge the organization and we challenge ourselves. With professional objectivity, we live by the ethical principles of professional accountancy. The Code for Ethics for Professional Accountants, produced by ESBA and facilitated by IFAC, is the gold standard for these principles. Greta Thunberg said she was one of just millions who passionately believe in taking climate action. Her generation wants to work for a purpose-driven organization that will make a positive impact in society. And our profession is a path for them to realize their ambitions and aspirations, which are critical to economic growth. This is apparent in the depth of the current climate emergency. India has felt its terrible effects. According to one expert, global warming has destroyed the concept of the monsoon. Long dry spells and violent floods have taken the lives of thousands of Indians and put tens of millions on the brink of poverty. The economic dimension of the climate emergency is clear, and so is the need to adapt to these new realities to pursue economic growth. The UN's Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are the globally accepted guidelines that professional accountants can use to lead the changes that business and governance must make. I want to acknowledge India's commitment to the SDGs. Prime Minister Modi put it very well, Sabka Sat, Sot, Sabka Vikas, which when I checked, it said development with all and development for all. That is the spirit the rest of the world should embrace. India's actions to meet the SDGs are commendable. The government has set goals and guidelines for making progress. The Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has developed a system of metrics for national SDG actions. But as accountants, we know measuring the effects of a policy program is every bit as important as setting it in motion. We have seen several major SDG initiatives in the past few years from India's national and state governments. Make in India, Skill India, and Digital India amongst them, and that has been referred to already. Professional accountants are relevant to the success of each of these initiatives. Globally, IFAC has identified 8 SDGs in which we, the profession, can make and have a direct impact. They touch nearly every aspect of social and economic life. SDG 8, quality education. 5, gender diversity. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. Climate action. Peace, justice, and strong institutions, and finally, partnership for the GLOWs. And I would like to emphasize that these are development goals. They're essential not just for sustainability, but also for economic growth. Quality education is how we boost our profession's talent pool, empower professionals to find initiatives and innovative solutions to social and economic problems, reduce inequality in the job market, and financial resources available to men and women alike. Professional accountancy organizations have a large role to play in meeting the SDGs, particularly as technology transforms our profession and how we work. Gender equality is a goal of quality education, but also a significant goal in its own right. I would just also like to point out that as of the beginning of this year, on the IFAC board, we now have 12 females and 11 males. So we are very proud that we've achieved gender equality, and we will encourage all of our member organizations around the world to follow the same direction. Because a diverse profession is a resilient profession, and a resilient profession will be a powerful engine for economic growth. In many countries, the share of women entering the accountancy profession is far too low, and the professional needs to continue to champion diversity of gender. Decent work and economic growth go hand in hand. We can see the effects of a lack of decent work among the poor in India. When people are working hard and barely scraping by, they can hardly find the time or financial resources for schooling and professional training. And as a result, the economy suffers. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure are self-explanatory, but I would like to take a moment to talk about infrastructure, which has also been mentioned earlier in particular. In many ways, the other two goals, industry and innovation, need infrastructure. Rail, road, electric grids, telecommunications networks are all vital for innovation, and particularly in day-to-day life. And I have observed, as I travel around the world, that economic success stories tend to begin with good infrastructure. India can benefit from the track record of developing countries and harness greater infrastructure investments for greater economic growth. And professional accountants need to support the public and private sector in accessing long-term finance to support such infrastructure investments. Responsible consumption and production are not just goals for individuals. They're also goals for organizations. The social benefits of greater attention to an organization's total effect, and not just like on markets and economies, but for example, the environment and the welfare of their workers, will be exceptionally important as regulators and shareholders take holistic views about value creation in a more robust way. Economic growth is not just about the financial bottom line. It is about creating a more just society so that everyone benefits. And climate action is, of course, central not just to the stability and growth of markets and economies, but we have seen in India and around the world also for the welfare of people. And I would like to add that the need for fundamental shifts in accounting practices is becoming more and more pressing. Corporate reporting is at the heart of the issue. Many reporting frameworks and disclosure requirements target only pieces of the picture and of an organization's ability to create value. Too often, environmental concerns do not even make them clear in these reports. The resulting complexity and lack of comparability can lead to inefficiency and increased costs. In other words, obstacles to economic growth. Peace, justice, and strong institutions are the bedrock of all of these goals. Equality, welfare, growth, environmental protections, none of these are possible without the oversight of strong public institutions. And where there is peace and justice, there's much greater opportunity to fulfill our economic ambitions. To look again to the future of the profession, the more we project ourselves and act in the interest of the public and in meeting the SDGs, the more self-evident our appeal to young people will be to join our profession. This broad view of the future and the role of the businesses and the success or failure of this view leads naturally to discussing corporate governance. Corporate governance is closely tied to economic growth. When we consider recent major corporate failures around the world, much discussion in the wake has been pointing fingers. But everyone in the ecosystem of corporate governance plays a key role in keeping companies running, people employed, and stakeholders happy. Directors, audit committees, executives, managers, preparers, and auditors, all of them must give the right guidance or input at some point in the key functions of corporate governance. Good governance in Indian institutions in a rapidly evolving global economy will require redoubled efforts from our profession. Getting good outcomes is never ending. It's a difficult process. There's no shortcut in instilling and maintaining a culture of good governance. but there is also no path to consistent growth and strong growth without it. ICAI members can and will fulfill their role as leaders in corporate governance to help make the development goals a reality. The variety and the challenges we face extend across all sectors of the economy. As professional accountants, we need to drive sustainable growth, not just in the service sector and not just in the industrial sector, but throughout the Indian economy. If we do not, we must not assume someone else will, and the consequences for the stability and growth of India's economy will be significant. I would now like to turn to an important intersection of issues: fraud and corruption, ethics, public sector accounting, and trust. Transparent, responsive, and accountable institutions are vital to improving lives and implementing a sustainable development agenda in India and around the world. Fraud and corruption challenge these institutions and the well-being of people that they serve, and they are an impediment to growth, costing the global economy more than $2 trillion every year, some 3% of global GDP. Or put that in context, that is 40% of the 5 trillion ambition for 2024 for India. Sadly, those affected most by fraud and corruption are the poorest in society. When public services fail, people suffer. When illicit activity leads to corporate failures, when simple theft hits someone's savings, working people, ordinary people, have the most to lose. As public perceptions of the social responsibilities of businesses change, looking at those outcomes, the things that make or break the lives of millions and the fabric of society will be evident not just as a moral issue, but as an expectation from shareholders and regulators. We know that a strong accountancy profession is correlated with lower levels of fraud and corruption, and by the way, to higher levels of economic growth. Ethics is a big piece in the puzzle. Clearly, fraud and corruption are ethical issues, and one of IFAC's top priorities is promoting ethics and integrity amongst professional accountants. Our commitment to ethics are part of our public interest mandate, and it distinguishes our profession and helps us navigate current and emerging issues. The International Code for Professional Accountants lays out 5 principles for accountants to abide by: integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, professional competence and due care, and of course, professional behavior. And collective action to fight fraud and corruption must be a joint goal of governments, businesses, and civil society. And our profession has an important role to play, grounded in these principles. This collective action should include increasing transparency, committing to whistleblower protection, and creating formal mechanisms to fight financial crime, money laundering, bribery, and data breaches. And IFAC continues to commit to reinforcing its professional ethics and making resources available for individual accountants to take on this effort. While we have been taking new strides in promoting our code, its 5 fundamental principles have not changed. I believe that they distinguish our profession amongst all others and underpin our ethical decision-making. They are gold standard, and they should be celebrated. We know our profession is critical in helping build a stronger, more resilient public sector, particularly in the fight against corruption. And that role has never been more important than it is now. The level of trust in governments and our ability to chart the course to a sustainable future is falling. And I want to stress public sector, which represents a large proportion of many economies. In many countries, particularly in Asia, public sector undertakings are critical to economic development. And this is particularly important in India, where we believe that roughly 20% of the economy is in the public sector. And that prominent role in the Indian state of many industries, the role of the public sector accountants in the continued economic growth of the Indian economy will be enormous. Good practices and a steadfast commitment to the ethics of our profession, which our profession embodies, will drive growth and sustainable growth. particularly in India, where professional accountants in public sector undertakings face a variety of expectations and decisions in the context not only of the Indian regulatory environment, but also a fragmented global regulatory environment. These standards will help set up public sector undertakings for success. The Edelman Trust Barometer, a global public survey, shows that only half the respondents trust businesses, NGOs, and governments. In part, this reflects the fallout of the uneven distribution of economic benefits since the global financial crisis, which undermined the credibility of many pillars of society and the global economy. But I would like to say something about India. India scored 72% on the Trust Index, while the rest of the world averaged 52%. And trust in government in India is at 74%. Nearly 75% of Indians express trust in the professionalism of accountants with respect to the management of tax. So, exceptionally high trust in Indian institutions and in professional accountants reflects your hard work and your leadership. You have helped create the conditions for strong economic growth to date, and your work can go a long way in sustaining these conditions and making future growth a reality. The link between these issues and India's economic growth is clear, as is the link between professional accountants' actions and the public interest. Ladies and gentlemen, your Global Summit 2020 covers many important topics relevant to our profession. We are looking to the future of India's economy, and India's growth is important to the global economic development. That means we are looking to sustainable growth in the public interest and how we as professional accountants fit into that picture. We are looking at professional ethics, at the fraud and corruption they mitigate, at the crucial role of public sector accounting in living up to our commitment to the public interest. And we are looking to leverage our role as trusted partners and business advisors. In a low-trust environment, millions have joined the movement led by Greta Thunberg. Her clear, compelling narrative about the urgency of sustainable development appeals directly to our abilities and our role as financial accountants. So I'm optimistic about the accountancy profession's capabilities to address tomorrow's challenges. I thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you, and on behalf of IFAC, to recognize ICAI's leadership for all the work you do to advance the profession in the public interest, and particularly in your support of India's mission to achieve 5 trillion. Dhanyawad. Thank you.